Well, hello, this is me again. Today is Saturday, December 3. And, it's becoming a tradition now for me making some kind of weekend videos. But there's so much to unpack today in the world that it becomes almost a necessity for me to speak like once every 3 days or something like that. Some people ask me to make it even more often, but you know what? I do not want to constantly run this, routine kind of, explaining on the, so to speak, as the hot piragi, so to speak, topics, but sometimes it's necessary. So here I am, and here we are, and let's talk a little bit. You obviously should remember this. This is very much related to the topic of this video, because I am hurting my face now while doing face palms. This is World War I British propaganda about those damn Huns, those Germans. I'm not saying the Germans were nice guys in World War I, but they certainly were not the Germans of the World War II. And you should remember that British propaganda basically it's not just exaggerated, just basically invented most of it in its anti-German zeal. And this is not to say that there were no anti-German propaganda elsewhere, for example, in Russia, let's say, or in other, Entente power, including France, of course. And no, it was, but obviously British went furthest. They invented the stories of German soldiers basically raping Belgium non-stop, just killing people for no reason, while in reality German invasion of Belgium, well, bad, of course, it's war, and it always a problem. It was relatively peaceful, and there was law and order preserved as much as possible, and Belgian businesses were working, and it was fairly organized, and there was very few atrocities against Belgians, so to speak. So, and in this particular case, we can say that British basically invented shit. And this is what they were doing ever since, because unlike most of the media in the world, which, again, are driven by the people, very many of them, not all, without morals or without any understanding or distinguishing of the right from wrong, British media, and especially tabloids, take it even further. I mean, they are just getting into the universe of such a bizarre, pardon me, shit, literally and figuratively speaking, that here we have today that thing, which was, of course, brought to the attention of its readership across the British tabloid universe. For example, here it is. If you look at what The Sun says, and believe me, Daily Mail did this too, and look at this. Sickly Vlad, critically ill Putin falls downstairs and soils himself while plagued with cancer, claims Kremlin insider. So, and when you read this and you think, did they take their stool for the testing, for the all kinds of the culture, just to figure out if Putin has some kind of the colon issues? But obviously, The Sun and British media insiders, they have an incredible access to Vladimir Putin's house, and they know things there which we all don't know. And you say that, oh, it's, British tabloids. I'm sorry, guys. If you look at actually the even Daily Mail basically reprinting the same bullshit and having reference to some insiders, which of course do not exist, and nobody would allow anybody with, any kind of malice near Vladimir Putin's personal life. So, you know what? You look at the commentaries there. Granted, a lot of those commentaries probably written by Ukrainians, but hey, guess what? Many of them are British, and people believe this crap, and they literally live in the parallel universe. If you think so that I'm exaggerating, well, we can obviously understand that British tabloids are is sewer, and it's sewer not only in terms of information, all of them are a sewer in terms of being a cloaca. And that's why they like to write about literally shit, people soiling themselves or everything. So if you read, for example, number of the works on the Holocaust, I believe the work of one of the Jewish rabbis was after the Holocaust, I believe, but you can read a number of the works about this, about relation between Germans and Jews in World War II, especially in the places where the ghettos, Jewish ghettos, have been organized. You will notice that even prior to war and German or already Nazi propaganda, unlike German propaganda of World War I, but Nazi propaganda was working hard in basically trying to equate Jews and then Slavs too with cloaca, literally sphincter. They love to make those references, which basically, pardon my French, deal with the issues of shit, excrement, and things of this nature. This is a good old Nazi tactics, but I mean, it started with British, and British were doing this, from the hell knows what, because mostly British press was always inventing crap, and now in the 20th century, it was pretty much doing this, especially in the post-World War II period and in the Cold War. So they hate Putin, they're desperate, they make things up which no normal person will make, but then again, these are British journalists, so most of them are lowlifes, and who knows, hidden pedophiles, most of them are like that. So, but if you thought that it's just Great Britain, no, we can also take a look at the fact that one of the French channels, and again, French and French media, they hate Russian gods. You can also, there's something between French and 1968 pedophiles and all those perverts who populate all those French media. There's some shtick for them. They are basically fixated on the hatred of Slavs. You can remember basically them inventing their absolutely crazy stories about Serbian atrocities during the war in Yugoslavia, and they are people, as I already pointed out, many of them are influenced literally by pedophiles, and they are basically, many of them are perverts. So, and apart from both of them, UK and French and others in Europe, being basically war criminals and basically supporting the atrocities of NATO against other countries. So, but even here, they have this. Russians are like cockroaches. Ukrainian-born expert in the quotation marks, deliberately tells French TV. During an appearance of French television, Ukrainian-born analyst Alla Poidi compared Russian citizens to pests and urged France to crack down on them and their culture. First, she actually, the whole notion that they invite this person is basically have to raise the question, are they competent? No, most 99% of the Western, and for that matter, many Russian journalists are incompetent. They do not have any specific skills. They know how to ask questions. They don't understand what real reporting is. And for the most part, they are propagandists, and they work for the agenda, and we know what the modern agenda of the combined West is. But, compare Russia to cockroaches. I mean, it's just another thing. RT reports that there were some people in the studio, which was the live audience, who felt uncomfortable. Really? Well, can you imagine if I call on the live TV? Of course, I will never be invited there. But point is, can you imagine that me talking, let's say, somewhere in Russian major channel saying that French are cockroaches? Can you imagine the reaction? There you go. But Russian cockroaches are fine, And the fact that somebody felt uncomfortable, don't worry, guys. I'm talking about Western Europeans. You'll get used to it too, because as I already stated, I do not accept those justifications and excuses anymore that, oh yeah, we didn't vote for that. We are hostages of, neocons and the United States. No, you're not. You did it willingly. You wanted it, majority of you anyway. And significant, granted, some minority of Europeans who really see where it is all going, is not going to make any difference whatsoever. These are your cultural, media, what have you, institutions, and you are the ones who supported basically low lives and all kinds of the perverts, basically having, you know, just and manipulating your public opinion. So please, I don't accept this anymore. So this is what I wanted to tell you from the get-go, and this is the facepalm. And if you think so that this is the just only one facepalm, as I already stated, I am hurting my face constantly with the facepalm. And as I already stated, and you read this in the basically the title of this video, we live in the facepalm paradigm. We live in the paradigm of the utter nonsense and incompetence, because it is, most of it is propaganda, most of it is spin, and that is why, for example, the combined West miscalculated so dramatically in basically whatever it does, and it's really screwed it up. I want to demonstrate to you how low is the incompetence, or obverse is true, how huge is incompetence, or even those people who are supposed to be kind of, you know, competent and have a serious background to explain themselves, or you know, express their opinions on matters, especially which we all love, the military porn and tactical minutia. Everybody loves this thing, you know, like all those weapons, you know, shooting this and that, all those sexy planes, you know, flying and shooting shit, you know, from the air and then attacking on the land. We know this. Yeah, there is a, as I already stated, this psychological issue, especially the societies which begin to disintegrate, the militarism grows dramatically, because actually we begin to lose real masculinity and real understanding what real man is, and that it's not physical appearance or blowing shit up. It's about making decisions in life. But even if you take the very popular resources from, let's say, United States on military and military affairs, be them what have you, from ranging from very professional, still professional magazines like United States Naval Institute Proceedings, or Parameters. You know, this is the U.S. Army War College publication, which are professionals and professional publications. But then we go a little bit low and you get into the pop military porn basically universe, and there's a lot of, I mean, a lot of resources printed and basically online, which tell you that, oh my gosh, here's what the real situation is with the with Russia. And you look at the, you know, guy's background and look at it and say, oh yeah, he was a guy in some Marine Corps unit, or he was the guy, some officer, but you know, he should know it. No, they don't, and that's what I'm on record, and as already stated, military education in the United States essentially collapsed, and the new generation of the even officers, which comes somewhere after the 2010, I would say, which is almost 13 years now, they already have been subjected to the extraordinarily falling academic standards, let alone they never were that great to start with. And then you have the issue of people being absolutely incompetent in any issue of the military science, and let alone if they don't have serious STEM, or basically physics, mathematics, engineering background, which is crucial when you talk about and understanding modern weapon systems, how they are deployed, how they are integrated, and what they do on the battlefield. And I just want to demonstrate to you. There is this funny source, 1945. Many people read that. And I was basically, I stumbled upon it. I read something in Russian press preparing for my video, and then here they are. They say, oh, this publication, there is the guy there who is former something, he wrote this thing, and his PhD, and he wrote about the submarines that United States deliberately exposes its submarines to send the signal, It's like, yeah, okay, why do you need to send signal by basically breaking the most important part of the submarine force, which is stealth, so basically clandestine operations. But no, so off I go. I read stuff, and then, good God, instead of just going into the submarines, I get this guy, and that pretty much most of what they write, this 1945 thing, is the military porn and masturbation of the lower ranks without military education, who basically write about things they have no clue about. And I want to demonstrate to you. So there was obviously this wonderful Russian Soviet submarine project 705 Lyra. You can find my description of that in the video which I dedicated to Russian submarines and Soviet submarines. You can easily find it in the list of my videos. But and it was a unique submarine. It was one of the fastest. The fastest was a single Russian titanium submarine called Project 661 on Char, and that was the fastest. It just reached the incredible speeds of about 44 knots. Lyras, which was 7 of them, and they were also titanium made, they achieved the speeds in excess of 41 knots. So they can basically outrun pretty much anything, including the torpedoes. And here we have that situation that the guy from this 1945, he writes about those submarines and why, and he explained why the US Navy never built titanium submarines. The name of the guy is the Brent Eastwood, and I will refer to this to him later down the road. And he explains a whole thing. Basically, the whole article is dedicated to discussion of the titanium and why United States never built titanium submarines. I can tell you immediately, you don't have to read this article. United States didn't build titanium submarines because it has zero experience of basically welding and putting together the hulls of such huge technical items as submarines. The United States never had this ability. They can do a little bit of here and there in terms of the size, but primarily it was very expensive. Titanium indeed is not as magnetic as other for example, steels, and at that time it was believed to be very useful in terms of the reducing of the magnetic signature of the submarine, which is still true, and of course it's slightly lighter, well, not slightly, quite lighter than the basically the steel hulls of the modern submarines. But when you read this article, and again, the guy writes about the subject he has no clue about, was titanium was definitely lighter, and that obviously had the basically some bearing on the maneuvering qualities of the, for example, Lyra Project 705 submarines, being them extremely fast and extremely maneuverable. Then he goes to thing and explains why, and that's when another facepalm happens, and here it is. He says that the United States made the right decision. Of course, they made the right decision because they didn't know how to work the titanium, apart from its being extremely important on this scale. And then he comes, comes to the conclusion. The Russian boats were fast because of the titanium, but they were not as quiet as advertised. The Americans felt that titanium was not worth the trouble and cost. Well, and this is where this facepalm paradigm, look at this expert biography. Serving as 1945 Defense and National Security editor, Dr. Brent Eastwood is the author of Humans, Machines, and Data, Future Trends in Warfare. He is an emerging threat expert and former U.S. Army infantry officer. You can follow him on the blah, 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 blah. And he holds PhD in political science and foreign policy international relations. Yes, the guy went through ROTC, served for the 4 years as infantry officer, and he comes up with this conclusion that the Russian boats were fast because of the titanium, but they were not as quiet as advertised. You say, what's the big deal, even if it's not true? Oh, it's a huge deal, because that tells you basically and covers the real story behind that. No, Lyras or Anchar Project 661 were outstanding in terms of speed. Had very little to do with titanium. It had some, it was a some factor, so to speak, but by far not the defining factor. The most important part of it was the use of the liquid metal nuclear reactors, which is called when you have what is called working body or heat transfer. because those liquid metal nuclear reactors used as a working body, which is the heat transfer body, essentially, they're bismuth lead reactors. These were literally liquid metals floating in the first contour, first circuit of this metal, which the reason they were designed like this and extremely complex in terms of maintenance is because this combination of bismuth and lead was so efficient in terms of the heat transfer that, for example, even being 3,500 tons of displacement, Lyras, which is a significant boat, Lyras were able to basically accelerate from 0 knots to almost 40 within 1 minute. That's how powerful those reactors were. And these were those reactors, not titanium, which defined those outstanding characteristics. And the fact is, Lyras were extremely noisy. I mean, all things considered, noisier than even the nuclear, traditional nuclear water reactors, so to speak. They were noisy, but it wouldn't matter. You can look up the history of the U.S. Navy, and you will see yourself how one of the, I don't remember the name of that specific aircraft carrier, but how the carrier battle group of one of the, I believe it was USS America, in Mediterranean for days was trying to break off the contact with basically one of the ladders which were following them. They knew she was there. They knew it was following them. The problem is they would reach the speeds of 30 33 knots and still cannot break off because Lyra was basically following them, and sometimes doing the maneuvers like following behind and just bypassing them, going into the frontal course angles and things of this nature. That's why the Lyras were so amazing. And the United States can do nothing about it, because they could have theoretically lifted the anti-submarine warfare, the aircraft, be them fixed wing, something like S-3 Viking, or all kinds of the helicopters. It wouldn't matter, even if they dropped their torpedo at that time, because Lyra would outrun the torpedo anyway. So, and that was the thing, you felt absolutely defenseless on that. But obviously the Lyras and Project 705, they were very difficult to maintain because obviously of the number of the technical issues when having this heat transfer body, lead bismuth, liquid metals basically mix, needed to be maintained constantly liquid under specific temperature, and there were other technical issues which were required to maintain those very sophisticated reactors almost basically running non-stop. And that's why Lyras have been discarded, despite the fact that, who knows, I suspect that we didn't hear last from those liquid metal reactors, and I have all reasons to suspect that we will hear about this more. And Russia has an outstanding, unequal experience with that. Soviet Union, Russia, and that's why it was the technical edge of such massive size, so to speak, that United States Navy had nothing to, against it, until of course the Mk-48 torpedo came out in full-blown, so to speak, capability, and was deployed to first line units, the ships and other submarines of the United States Navy. Then it was about like 46 knots, I believe, maximum speed, and that was giving some kind of chance in the fight against that type of the threat. So there you go. You have the guy who is in charge of this thing. He has PhD, this 1945 resource. He has PhD in political science. That means he has no education whatsoever. He served in the U.S. Army, and when you read this whole thing, it's basically a repetition of the same thing as what you have with the tabloids in UK, which is basically making shit up. There, for example, one of their articles tells you that actually Russia sustains 500 killed in action every day. There is something wrong with all those American and Western military experts, not all of them, but some. Evidently they have issues with mathematics. And I can totally understand that, considering the fact how math is taught in US colleges, especially in humanitarian fields such as like political science, which is not even science, it's not an education, it's basically hodgepodge collection of the political facts, pretending to be the political history of the world. And then you have, as a result, you have John Heimer, who speaks with the former president, Prime Minister of Sweden, Mr. Bildt, and both guys have zero understanding what they're talking about modern war and things of this nature. And that is the facepalm paradigm. You read this and your hair begin to move on your head, because when you understand the gaping abyss of the incompetence and sometimes just malice, because they understand many of them are American exceptionalists, that they really need to constantly, show something that America is great. America is great, but it's not, she is great not for the reasons they think. America is not that great militarily. She never was, really. But the point is that obviously they need this, macho thing, this almost wrestling match, and they need to feel themselves so confident, which they are not, and they begin to basically create this white noise where any logical, let alone competent argumentation is being discarded because they cannot face it. And here's another thing. As I already stated, that would have been a huge PR thing, but you know what? Actually, I was surprised that it didn't go as vast and with all this fireworks as I expected it to be, because obviously, as we all know, United States unveiled basically Lockheed. These are the guys who invented all this generation bullshit about what's the name of it, generations of the aircraft, fourth, fifth generation, whatever. So the United States unveiled their B-21. It was a rollout, as you immediately can say that, well, yeah, it's pretty much same old subsonic, very stealthy thing, and there will be no new super duper technologies which make this something special. And fact is, it's basically probably a cheaper version of B2, but again, that was only like 20 seconds. They showed this thing and then closed it, but it's the slow subsonic stealth bomber based on the very old and very outdated tactical concept of the penetration of the air defense. Air defense of who? Again, if it's air defense of some third world nation, do you really need that? Well, yeah, probably. And then, of course, we can never forget, of course, another guy with the political science and journalism, Kyle Mizukami, who was writing actually on November 1, and he writes about inside the great 21st century bomber race between Russia, China, and the US. And my question is there any race in the bombers? I don't think so. There is any race in the bombers, because nobody races to create something like B-21 in Russia. Russia is creating its, and here Mizukami obviously lies, because he needs to sell his articles, he needs to make living by basically bullshitting people and writing on the things he has no idea. But let me explain again. For example, even this B-21, which is not really a threat against the state-of-the-art modern air defense, because it doesn't matter how you hide it, it will be detected, and you will have the targeting, and modern air defense complexes, Book M3, S-400, and let alone S-400, have no problems in shooting that down. But the point is that the only reason they, as I already stated last time when I spoke about it, the only reason they talk about is as the fifth generation or sixth generation fighter, bomber, is because it has this, has developed a net-centric capability. Wow. So, and they say it has the basically the radar, which is as powerful as that of the E3 Sentry AVAX. Well, welcome to the real world. If you have the radar as E3 Sentry AVAX, the moment you use it, you will have the missile flying to you. So, but this is what they try to present it as some kind of achievement. But Mizukami obviously lies, because in the end, when you read the technical capability of the B-21, which they gave you, which is not sixth generation, it has nothing to do with sixth generation, it merely has more processing power in its onboard computers, it's the fact that, of course, it it is good old JASM, Joint Strike Munition, which will be its main weapon. It's a stealthy missile, subsonic one, with the range of probably, they say it's 1500 kilometers, but I don't know. So when Mizukami writes bullshit about facepalm bullshit about any race, let me explain. Russia is building Tu-160M and M2, absolutely new airplane, which are not stealthy as, for example, B-21. For that, Russia develops, which is called PAK-DA. It will be also, they say subsonic, stealthy aircraft. But this stealth shtick already, it's becoming nauseating, basically. Let me explain you why it is nauseating. Because evidently people who write this, they don't understand. First, they don't understand the physical issue of the modern signal processing. They don't understand issue of modern networking, and of course they do not understand issue of platforms. People, we are talking about in this case B-21, Tu-160, or even good old Tu-95. We're talking about platforms, and let me explain the issue. Here it is. This is one of the containers, so to speak, bomb base of Russian Tu-160. And as you can see yourself, it has 8 X-101 strategic cruise missiles with their officially declared range of 5,500 kilometers. There is already 10,000 kilometers long range missile, which is AM updated. And I believe that it has 2 bomb bays, so what, we're looking at 16. Correct me if I'm wrong. It could be actually more, but hey, it is what it is. This is at least basically 16 missiles which it carries. And even the good old Tu-95 carries 8 of those X-101. Let me show you what platform is for. Platform is for carrying the weapons. In terms of the missile technology, the United States is nowhere near Russia. Let me explain to you what even the X-101, which is being used extensively, by the way, in Ukraine, and as many people say that, oh yeah, Russians ran out of them. Evidently, Russia continues running out of them non-stop. Here how it looks like. If you take even the previous version of X-101, and you can see yourself, you have some strategic bomber, be it this Tu-160 or even Tu-95 carrying those missiles. You see what 5,500 kilometers gives you. You can launch it practically everywhere in the continental United States, while being under the cover of your fighter escorts, and pretty much whole Europe. So basically, it's that's what it tells you. So in this case, why do you need such a bomber for such a price to penetrate somebody's air defense? You just need it on the patrol. But again, we're looking at something bizarre, American obsession with this idea of the air war, which is still this perverted Antonio Duha, Italian air strategist, dreaming up at some point of time that those squadrons of bombers flying and bombing the shit out of population and industrial centers. But we have this. And it is also a facepalm, because obviously modern warfare, you know what, I'm writing the 4th book. I'm not making the secret out of it. And we have to understand, and I am on the record, I will repeat it again, the Russian special military operation already is being studied in serious military academies all over the world. But once we will get more information, especially on the use of the modern technical means and modern weapon systems, especially air defense and aviation, believe me, it will be a wowzer. Actually, I know it is already a wowzer, because some data which streams from the, especially in performance of the air defense, and especially in terms of performance of the standoff weaponry, is shocking for the United States and NATO. And I will be talking more about it. But I gave you just basically a little bit of the spread, so to speak, about the modern Western media and military experts not having a clue what they're talking about. And because of that, because we live in the facepalm paradigm, what's left is always what? Make the shit up and write about the shit. Write about how Putin soiled himself, while falling downstairs in his house. Write about that Russians lose 500 people killed, a day. So invent stories about Russian submarines, invent stories about whatever. And you know what? It sells. The bullshit sells. It always did. This is the fundamental principle on which most media in the world operate. That is why sometimes inadvertently, not that they are low lies, we know they are low lies. We know this is the human, garbage which goes and work, for example, in Western media. But they sometimes inadvertently, I do not necessarily mean that all of them are sadists, no, but they become even inadvertently and sometimes without even understanding that war criminals by supporting criminal agendas, political agendas, and basically cheerleading for the genocidal wars. But here we are. And so to finish this today, we also need to kind of remember that the political world doesn't stop even today. And this is why I needed to also unpack this. It is the fact that Mr. Scholz called Russia and tried to say to Putin that no, you cannot do what you're doing, and Mr. Putin obviously, I think so, he soiled himself because he was so afraid by Mr. Scholz, and because we know Mr. Scholz is such a powerful figure and Germany is such an important player in geopolitical events that Putin probably soiled himself. I'm being facetious, of course, but we know that Macron and Scholz are now convulsing because they know Europe is done. And now those idiots, when they accepted and basically adopted this oil cap, we already have the reaction from Moscow. Moscow stated that, well, screw you. Mr. Peskov said, well, you want an oil cap? We're not going to sell it to you. And Russia obviously bought, as we know already, 110 tankers. Yeah, this poor Russia. To move those tankers towards the basically customers who are glad they will continue to do it. Who? Oh, I can tell you who. Here's Russia's good old strategic partner who today stated, you know what, India to keep purchasing Russian oil after sanctions go into effect. India said that it would continue to purchase Russian crude oil even after the embargo and price cap go into effect on December 5, an official in the Indian oil ministry said on Friday. So this is everything you need to know about what is happening and what is being done to Europe. As I already stated, Europe will be done. I write for 8 years that Europe is the lunch. And I'm sorry, guys, it is what it is. So, and Russia, again, as I stated, yeah, already a number of the very high-level people in Moscow today stated that you can easily find it on all major Russian news agencies that, well, then Europe has to live without Russian oil. Well, too bad. Russia does what it says. You put the cap on, we stop supplying you with oil. Good luck, Europe. What can I say? You wanted it, you got it. So, and this is my talk today for this weekend, and I try to keep it as short as possible because so much to talk about. Anyhow, this was my facepalm paradigm explanation. So, guys, and as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe and support me on Patreon. And you know what? Have a nice weekend. I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.